Okay, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Sansara Taylor. I'm with The World Can't Wait, Drive Out the Bush Regime. There we go. I also write for Revolution Newspaper and Counterpunch, TruthDig.com, and I'm a reporter for WBAI Pacifica Radio in New York City. And I wanted to start by actually reading the first line of my last article, which was before Bush's speech. It says, "The triumph of the new Democratic Congress on their first day and their promises of a new direction offered all the refreshment of Lysol dressing up the stench of rotting homes in New Orleans' 9th Ward, of human waste and blood caked in CIA secret torture dungeons, and of the mangled bodies that are being chewed by dogs in the streets of Baghdad." And I think what we have in this country is and I want to talk a little bit, this was before the escalation of this war. We've seen for the last 5 years under the Bush administration unprecedented moves towards remaking this society in a fascist way and towards creating a global empire that is unchallenged and unchallengeable. And that I just wanted to say that, and we're seeing this again, I wanted to speak to one aspect of this recent Bush speech, where he gives this speech. Look, people went to the polls, they tried to reject the war, they tried to reject George Bush. He threw down a gauntlet and said, we are escalating this murderous war. Mark has talked about the nature of this on the ground. There are war crimes being committed. There are crimes against humanity being committed. And we see how quickly the Democrats' talk of a new direction gets turned into a symbolic vote, a meaningless gesture. And there are real lives, millions of lives that are going to be affected by this. But this is a dance we have seen over and over again for the last 5 years, and the terms of discussion, the terms of debate, and the terms of behavior among people who are dissatisfied with this have to change. Right. We have seen this where first there is an outrage by the Bush administration, there's a little bit of hoopla raised, but they either openly announce something or they get caught doing it. The Democrats raise some outrage, then they get reasonable and they have some debate, and then eventually they capitulate and new horrors are normalized and codified into place. We saw this with the Patriot Act 1, we saw this with the launch of the war in Iraq, we saw it with Patriot Act 2, we saw it with the NSA spying scandal, we saw it with Judge Roberts, Judge Alito. We saw it with the Terry Schiavo theocratic lunacy. We saw it with the ban on abortion in South Dakota. Over and over, these things keep happening, and at the end of each of them, the terms of discourse have shifted so that at each point, there's some debate, but it's further and further and further towards a point of no return. And I will say this, the America that we once knew, that I grew up in, the people here lived in, is never coming back. And we're either going into full throttle this future that the Bush administration is hammering into place very quickly, or we're going to divert it through mass political resistance, upheaval, protest from below, and not relying on the Democratic Party. Okay. So,
nonviolent civil war.
I wanted to say, if Bush's new speech shows anything, for years he's now said, there will be no withdrawal of troops on my watch. If his recent escalation shows anything, it is enough of this conversation, we cannot impeach the president, we have to end the war. No, there will be no end to this war without driving this regime out. And I'll say this, is when Nixon said he would end the war in Vietnam by escalating to Cambodia, you had people out in the streets in massive resistance, massive protest, massive political upheaval saying, no, we refuse to tolerate this. And that needs to happen now. The Nixon impeachment, the Nixon resignation did not just happen because of a Watergate break-in. It happened because their army was in a debacle. The military was disintegrating. There was GIs in political upheaval and rebellion. There were people all throughout the streets of this country. There was revolution on the lips of the most oppressed. There was music criticizing the administration, creating a whole counterculture and resistance. And there was millions of other people. And there were, I'm going to be we can have some discussion. I just want to say, and there were millions of more people who were in danger of losing their faith in the way this whole system works. And it was in that context that it did not come from the Democrats. There was Republicans involved. There were people from Nixon's own cabinet who refused to lie for him because the political situation changed from the bottom up. And we are poised at a moment in history. And the media has a lot to do with reporting on protests, reporting on it does matter when people get out. It changes the terms of debate. And I will say this, we are at a point in history where it is not sufficient to say we voted against Bush. It's not sufficient to say we didn't like what he was doing, we put a bumper sticker on our car, we volunteered, whatever. If we do not stop these crimes, then we are complicit. And history will judge us sharply. The truth has been told. A lot of people are lied to, but this I want to direct to people here. A lot of people don't know. They listen to Fox News. They don't understand what's happening. That is millions of people. That's a problem. But for those who do know, we have a disproportionate responsibility and a role to play in the media here and people who influence media. We have a disproportionate responsibility in going out and waking up other people. It does make a difference when people get out in the streets. That is the only way that we change the discourse in this country from the bottom up. This is something I really want to plug. World Can't Wait. Go to worldcan'twait.org. Come to the protests on January 27th. Report about the protests on January 27th against this war. This story needs to be told not just from the terms that are debated in the official halls of power. And I'll end with this as saying 2008 is, and go to worldcan'twait.org, or in the back we have copies of the call for the World Can't Wait. Mass distribution. We paid for this to be published in the New York Times and USA Today, talking about the crimes of the Bush administration. This is the only way this is going to get out. Put it on the air, post it on websites, get this call. And I want to end by saying 2008, and we have to tell the truth to people about this, is too late. If George Bush is not impeached or driven from office before then everything that he has done, the ripping up of habeas corpus, the legalization of torture, the neglect and betrayal of the Katrina victims, which is still ongoing, the assault on women's reproductive rights, the demonization of gay people, the attack on science and critical thought in the schools, all of this will remain and be codified into place no matter who becomes the next president. This stuff will stay with us. So I want to put a challenge to everybody here. We have a huge role to play. We have to encourage people to get out in the streets on January 27th. There is like a simmering pot beneath the surface, but it's got to be called forward. There are so many people, you've seen the polls, who hate what's happening. But they have to become activated. They have to get out in the streets. We have to let them know that there's a place for them to be, and it will make a difference. So that's that. Thank you. Oh, yes.